to the Days Grimm podcast. My name is Brian Michael Day.
My name is Thomas Grimm.
And Tom, we're welcoming into our virtual studio today Ryan McCurdy. Ryan, hello, sir.
How's it going? How you guys doing?
Oh, it is
great,
going,
man.
brother. I haven't seen you in... I've been told I'm not allowed to use that term anymore. I haven't seen you in a while. How are you? Doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Not too
What
bad.
have you been up to since September? I think that was the last time you said that.
Just dealing with work and the absence of work. That sounds depressing. But, the film industry has been a little bit of a weird funk lately on the other side of the camera, so to speak.
Is that with, you think AI coming into the mix?
No, this is more... A lot of people, I think, are saying it's because there's been... what's the word I'm looking for? Retribution for the strikes that happened like last year or so. So between the writer's strike, the actor's strike, studios are being a little bit more hesitant, or at least that's what people are saying, is that they're being a little more hesitant on making new content. And I think also studios are like trying to reel back because they realize they probably put too much out there. My guess.
You're from Evansville, but you're currently in Atlanta, which is like the new Hollywood, or like the Hollywood equivalent almost, or like the next big boom for movie area.
The Hollywood that's not on fire is what I think a lot of people are calling it right now.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Actually, Thomas, I'm actually originally from Carmel, Indiana. So
gotcha. I used to live in Greenwood.
So I grew up in Carmel. I went to school at Carmel High School, and then I graduated and I came to I went to USI, University of Southern Indiana. All the new ads for USI are so much more pristine than what it was when I was there.
So, but Carmel's 5A, right? Like a high school, they're 5A.
They're 6A.
Well, they're 6A now, but 6A wasn't a thing back then.
Cow.
Right. When I was in school, I think it was still. I don't think 6A was a
6A
thing
was not a thing yet. Yeah.
6A is a new thing. But I will say, so I guess before we get to high school, let's rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
So do you experience a camera before high school? Like when do you have like a memory? So like for me, my grandpa used to set up a camcorder, like old school camcorder, and would film everybody opening their Christmas presents every year. And that was like one of my first memories with a camera. So I didn't know if you had like one.
My dad had a Sony. I don't even remember what the camera was called. It was just I think it was like not an 8mm film camera, but like 8mm tape or whatever it was, right? Or high 8 tape, I think is what it was. Oh yeah,
they put the VHS in there.
It was like a mini VHS tape. And I remember he did exactly what you're talking about, is going around and like filming everything. So, and not that long ago, I had my dad had all the tapes and stuff, and he wanted to digitize them. And instead of going through a company, he's like, "Can you put something together? Can you do this?" And I was like, "I think I can." So I guess he went to somebody to digitize the tapes. So he digitized them to disc, and then he was like, and I kind of told him like, "Dad, you probably also want those on a hard drive." So eventually I had him put them on a hard drive. And it was crazy just watching all these tapes of all these different things from like when I was a kid, or just before I was born, or when I was like really little. And I'm watching all these like family videos and stuff. And it was just so bizarre, because I'm thinking about today and I'm like, I don't think I record as much as my parents did, because it was almost like you got the camcorder and you went around and you were like, okay, I got to tape the birthday. I got to tape the family gathering, and like there was no professionalism to it, and then everyone was messing with the Zoom and all that stuff.
No, everything was like a terrorist negotiation video in the 90s. It was just like VHS everywhere. Like,
so that was like your first memory of cameras. But when do you think was the first time that like you picked up a camera?
Yeah, when does that happen?
That was probably when I was like in 5th or 6th grade, I think. My parents had gotten like a new, like they had the old one, right? It was like the old analog one. And then I think Sony had come out by that point sometime in the late, it was like 2000. I think it was like, this is 2000 or something like that. They had come out with a new digital one. And then I remember recording, like, I had like little Lego pieces, and I remember recording stuff with Lego. Actually, what I remember was I remember watching how in Star Wars that they did all of the effects with all of the ships and stuff, and how like they had basically moved the camera instead of moving the figure, like the ships, right? That's how they were able to make it look like the ship was moving or moving forward or backwards. And I remember messing with my parents' camera like on Christmas morning and like doing that with the Lego Star Wars Lego figures that I had made or something like that. So that's like one of the earliest memories I remember actually doing that myself. So that was fun.
We had to do something like that in like computer class in middle school, like stop motion, like a project where you had to do a stop motion to something. And I've been trying to get my son into doing something like that just with Legos or whatever.
Also, since we're talking to somebody that works in film, dude, I'm a big fan. You're into like the film festivals and stuff, like IFC and all that stuff. You probably follow some of that. I'm a big horror film fanatic. I don't know what you think about horror films, but there was one called Stop Motion, and oh my God, it is like nightmare fuel. I swear to God. But yeah, stop motion is terrifying to me. Have you ever done any stop motion before, sir?
Did I do stop? I'm trying to think if I had. I like think I have
figurines where it's like frame by frame.
Now I'm thinking about it. I did remember like, so I had, you remember how, I have like those people in your life that were like the first inspiration, or the person that like kind of were like the gatekeeper that opened you up to like, oh, there's this thing that you didn't know about. So I remember when I was in elementary school, and I would go to daycare like after, and people say daycare and they think it's like little kids, and I'm thinking more like after school
YMCA
care kind
after
of thing.
school care,
kind of thing like that. There was a place called Kids Choice that was a offshoot of Kinder Care. If you guys remember, I don't know if
I went to Kinder Care.
I think they had one in Evansville.
They had one.
So they had they had an offshoot of it called Kids Choice, and it was supposed to be meant for like a little bit older kids. And I would go to that after school. There was a guy there, and I remember they all the teachers, they didn't name them by their last names. They just would say Mr. or Mrs. and then their first name. So there was one guy there. His name was Mr. They didn't want to
give away their identity.
I guess. I don't know. There was a guy there. His name was Mr. Bill. He was this older dude. He was into art. His name was Mr. Bill. But I remember he was the guy. He was like, to me, the gatekeeper, the guy who opened my eyes to like a lot of the monster films, like the Universal monster films, but also like Godzilla and all that stuff. Because I guess he was an art guy, and he would, and I think they probably hired him because he was like some defunct art teacher, is my guess. But like we would, he'd had like shows clay things, and stuff.
Taking,
but I remember
classes.
Yeah. He has a secret stash.
He's just there to bear the kids. But I do remember him, like, I remember building, because like I was kind of inspired by him, and I built like a Godzilla, not Legos, but it was some kind of thing similar to Legos. And I built like a Godzilla, and I built like a Rodan and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, we'll build these. And I wanted to like film it and make into it a movie. And I had like grand ideas and stuff. And then we never did it because it was just like, didn't have a camera. And we never, that never came to fruition. But I do remember like wanting to do stuff like that. That was fun.
Dude, stop motion is both it's a intriguing art, but also terrifying to me. I don't know why. All stop motion films I've ever watched are just creepy, like innately.
Even King Kong, like even the original King Kong.
I don't know that I've seen it.
South Park.
Be honest with you, I'm not like a film buff, but yeah.
South Park.
South Park is a cartoon.
South Park, first few seasons was all done on, was it construction paper?
Cardboard. Construction paper,
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay.
So, 5A schools compared to like I lived up there and moved down to Evansville halfway through high school. And like in Indy, they had like the school had its own news network. Were you involved in that at like Carmel or anything?
No. Well, okay. Yes and no. So like, yeah. And I love that you're bringing Carmel up like this, because I remember maybe it was like a couple years ago, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the students, like the seniors, did this like TikTok video that everyone lost their minds over, because they were like, how does this school have all this stuff? And it's like, it's Carmel, Indiana. And they're like, They couldn't fathom the idea that like the whole county is like this. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
This can't be possible. Like
every computer in the computer lab's IMAX.
Yeah. They're like, how do they have, because they did this TikTok and they were showing the school and they were like, this is the auditorium. And it's like this big production auditorium. This is the natatorium. This is where like the swim team is at. This is the weight room. And it looks like LA Fitness or something. And then they're like, this is the planetarium. And they're like, your school has a planet. Like people are like, they couldn't figure out why our school had a planetarium, a radio station, a TV station. Like just have everything. The school had the school I went. I mean, I was grateful that I was able to go to Carmel, but Carmel is like a ridiculous school because it has all these things.
Ryan, one thing you'll learn throughout the course of this interview. I know we got to meet briefly at that VIP party, but I am very dumb just to be rather brash about it.
No,
where is Carmel? Is that near Indianapolis?
It's just north.
Yeah,
of
it's
Indy.
just north of Indy. So
okay,
like
and then,
if you go,
And then a follow-up question. Earlier you used the word retributions. What does that mean?
Like, just like, like revenge, basically. Like, you guys, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, you guys screwed us. You're now asking for more money. Okay, great. We're going to put less out there then.
I'm going to make sure I use that in Scrabble next time I play retributions.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, sorry. Away from that, what was your favorite part about attending at Caramel or
Caramel. Caramel.
Is it Carmel?
I think it's Carmel. Yeah.
Okay. At Carmel High
people
School.
Make that joke. People make that joke because they talk about caramel and Mount Carmel or caramel. I don't know what it is.
I'm
California.
Carmel. What was your favorite thing about attending at Carmel High School?
Oh, I don't know. It was.
You don't have like a favorite memory or like a thing that like you'll always hold.
I liked my friends but the thing was I was not a good student in school. Like I wasn't good at what
me neither.
I was a C student.
No video kid is. So you didn't get in. So you weren't in you weren't in any of the video or radio programs.
I did. So that was I was going to say. I was in radio. So I did. I did radio, and then I did do. They had like an intro class that was supposed to be kind of like you took that, and then it would be an offshoot to the news stuff. And I never did any of the news stuff. So news or like video stuff, but there was a class that was kind of the intro class to that. And I did do that. So, and I do remember actually that class in particular was kind of the one that was like the aha moment, like, oh, that's how movies are made. And I was like, it just dawned on me where the teacher was talking about like, yeah, when you film something, you shoot a shot of somebody doing something. And then you come over here and you shoot something else and it's a different shot. And then, you may come back and then you shoot a wide shot. And then these things are sequenced and that's how movies are made. And I was like, oh, like that was kind of the aha moment. And I think, and I remember that because like, we were talking earlier about, dad on Christmas filming everything all at once, or like anytime someone was like, yeah, we're going to do a school project and make a little movie version of it, this
is why movies like 1917 are so huge and crazy.
Yeah. But everybody's reaction's like, oh, we'll just film you doing that thing and then we'll keep filming it and it's like a play and you'll do this over here. And it's like, no, you just shoot this little bit here and then we'll turn the camera on and you do that little thing and then we'll move over here and you shoot that. Like that's how movies are made. I'm like, oh, okay.
You basically learned what a shot list was.
Exactly. So I was just like, oh, and I remember having that like epiphany at that age, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get why how movies work, and I never thought of it at that moment in time when I was a kid, and then I think that was like the earliest. They say like that's when the bug bite you. That might have been like the earliest inkling of like,
I want to know what Tarantino's freaking shot list looks like, because his non-chronological films that are just willy-nilly all over the place, like you start at the end and then you're in the middle,
but it's just location. It's whatever location in that day, you film everything there that you can.
And I have a question about that coming up as far as
we'll get into that. But first I want to find out what Ryan did after high school. High school.
So I ended up I again wasn't a good student. I had probably a dark period in my life where all my friends were going to college, and a lot of them went to like IU. I wanted to go to Ball State because that had like a TV film, like they had stuff, like I don't think not sure if I wanted to go into film at that particular moment, but I knew I wanted to do something creative. And also when I was in school, I was really into art. So I did a lot of art stuff. I took a lot of art classes. So I thought I was going to do something like that. And then that didn't turn out. So I didn't have the grades to go to Ball State. And so I ended up going to everyone's favorite community college in Indiana, which is Ivy Tech. And so I was in Ivy Tech for about a year. What did you say?
He said gang shit. Hey, listen,
I ended up at Ivy Tech. Oh, go ahead.
I went to Ivy Tech for one semester, dude. I went to Ivy Tech for one semester. So shout out to
I went to Ivy Tech for like 1 year and a quarter of a semester.
Yeah, I was there. I was there for a year, and it was a nightmare because you're sitting there and you're just like thinking like, I'm in this class with all these like basically the rejects, because that you're like, everybody didn't want to come here, and they're like,
don't talk about my people like that.
There's like adults.
Don't talk about my people like that.
Walking into your class.
No, but while we're on Ivy Tech, though, I just want to pump the brakes here. I did go to the school there for one semester, and I remember it kind of, you get that feeling where you're looking at the people around you, and it's like,
yeah,
like it's like
you're like, oh,
it's like a bunch of 40-year-old people.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
Yeah, there's like in class to go play foosball for money in the lobby. Like,
dude, I ditched a lot of classes in Ivy Tech. That's why it was also probably a dark, because also I had no direction. I was like, I went there and I was like my parents like, well, you got to go to school, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll go to Ivy Tech. I couldn't get into anything else at that moment in time, and I ended up at Ivy Tech, and I was like, it sucked because it was like, there was no like, oh yeah, you're gonna go to Ivy Tech for film. Like, no, you're just there to get classes and check boxes so then you could go to a better school, which is what you did for a year. And it was, and I had a lot of like, it was just the worst time in my life, or at least I remember at that moment in time. And then the next year, and then finally, like, I had a buddy who went to USI, and I think he had got in. I think that was when USI was letting almost everybody in, because it wasn't,
nice.
It felt like everybody, they were letting everybody else in. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to apply there. And then eventually went to USI. So it was just like, oh, thank God. But they had a TV program at USI, which they still do. And so I ended up over there, and they were doing TV and radio. And I wanted to do film, of course, and like movies. And I didn't mention this, but between after Ivy Tech and then going to USI, during that summer, my buddies who had been at IU, they came home, and one of my friends, he was like, let's make like a TV show. And this is around the time when people, I think like Sunny in Philadelphia had just come out, and people are talking about, oh yeah, shoot things on DV tape. And then like, we could make a show or make a movie. And I think that's when like Mumblecore started up. So there were a lot of people going like, yeah, we just need like a camera. We can just shoot like a show or something. So we started like writing a script.
Then
YouTube was starting out, and that was back when like,
because they had like prank wars, right? It was like
they had all sorts of stuff. Yeah. But people, like, you could upload, I think you could only upload up to like 10 minutes. I think that was like, there was limits back then. And they didn't have HD. It was just coming out. Like, people were like blowing their minds at like, oh, look how nice this looks and stuff.
720.
Yeah. But exactly. But we shot, we shot like me and my three of my friends, we made this little like TV series called Welcome Back to Nowhere, and it was supposed to be a web series, and we really only did 2 episodes. But back then, like, because the way YouTube was set up, it was like each episode was broken up into 6 parts, so it was almost like, oh, there's like more episodes for this thing. And we even had like a premiere and all this stuff with our family, like our parents, and it was like the most embarrassing thing, because we were like, yeah, we're gonna have a premiere and do all this stuff. And then we forgot, oh wait, that's right, we're teenagers, and we're making a show with all this like sex jokes and F-bombs and like really dirty stuff. And the funny thing is, like, we do this thing, and like my grandpa thought it was the funniest thing in the world. He was all about it. But that was like that was like when I was like, yeah, I really want to get into film and stuff. And then ended up at USI. but my dad's from Evansville originally. So it wasn't like that big of a deal for me to come to Evansville. And he was like, oh, okay. So that's how I ended up at
Where's your
USI
mom from?
and then Evansville. My mom's up from in Chicagoland area. So originally,
that's gross.
Yeah.
Brian said, "Okay, moving on." So what? So do you get your college degree?
I saw your clip about you guys talking about going to the Bean, and there was a murder, and
it wasn't Tom. It was my brother. So my brother and I were trying to go to the Bean, and somebody had just got there was blood on the Bean, and I was so distraught, and I was so.
It was Shark Week.
I was.
Shark Week.
I went to the Bean. I flicked it.
I was so. I was like, I'm touristy first off because I've only been to Chicago a handful of times, but I was just so distraught. I was like, "You mean they're killing people below these buildings, like in the downtown?" And they're like, "Yeah, people just die everywhere all the time."
People were talking about that in Indianapolis not that long ago. They were just like,
that lady drove
Indianapolis
her
really
car on
violent.
the canal.
Yeah, bro.
It's nuts.
I don't know. So shout out.
I think it's like out farther, maybe not in this center part of the city.
Yeah, but
everywhere.
honestly though, and I'll leave it at this. My mention on Chicago, Dan Ryan Highway, they got to do something. It's wild out there. It's like the wild west. I don't know what's going on there. They're just drivers do whatever they want on the Dan Ryan.
So I do want to mention. Well, I guess so. Do you get your degree in film, or what's your degree in?
I got my degree in radio and television because that's USI.
And then when you get out, do you get a career immediately in radio and television?
I did actually. So I worked at Channel 25, and that was fun.
Like here in town?
Yeah. I worked at over in Henderson. So right after I got out of school, I was fortunate. What's funny is I worked. It was like. You remember when 25 and 7, all like the regime, all the changes that were going on, the regime that changed, it was like Nexstar came in and it was nuts.
It's just funny how you worded that. No, I do remember that.
It was just a nuts like circus thing where everything was changing, and I was coming in the midst of that because I was there. Well. I was right after all of that had just happened because I guess basically what had happened was 25 was owned by this private company and they couldn't sell it off until a certain period of time. They sold it off, and then Nexstar, who owned Channel 7, swoops in and was like, we're going to buy it. And then but at the same time, Fox was like, you couldn't have two affiliates or something. So 7 lost its affiliateship. And then they moved everybody over to Henderson. So now it's 7 and 25 in the same building. And then it's just this weird thing where there were a lot of people that they laid off that were original 25ers. Some of them went over to 14. And so they were still, I just got there at the right time, I guess. And I knew the news director because he had taught, kind of guest taught a couple of classes at
this
USI.
Is in Indy, right? Or is this?
No, this is in Evansville. This is here in Evansville.
Okay.
Tom, before you reach out, I think that's fascinating that you guys were in the same building. Was there ever turf wars, over who can use the restroom when type situation?
No,
this is our water fountain.
No, it's not set up that way.
You guys weren't beefing in the hallways.
No, because 7 and 25, you were the same employee. You were just an employee of Nexstar. So the same stuff was on 7 as 25. The only things that they would adjust or change is that the anchors that they had for the 7 or for Channel 7 were different. And I don't know what it is now, but that's how it was run. It was just it was one giant station.
Was it the building downtown by the riverfront?
No. It was over in Henderson. So we went. That's right. They went over. Yeah.
Okay.
Channel 7 left that building that was that 44 is at now. So 7 was at that building. They went over to. Yeah, it was just a whole everyone's moving and going to other buildings and stuff. I guess. But 7 and 25 was all in one building.
Okay.
Working for the news is where I guess I want to say you I guess I assume in college you learn I guess I shot some drone footage for the news, on the side one time, for a little bit, and I got to see like a bit behind the scenes of like how it worked, you know, and like these pop-up spots or whatever. And I got to learn a little bit more about like audio, cameras that connect to audio, how they connect to audio, like whole new world type thing. Do you think you like learned that combination of like everything? Like, did you basically learn way more skills?
I feel like I no disrespect to USI, but I feel like I wasn't as prepared as I thought I would need it to be when I got the job that I did. So like, I think that first couple of years working at Channel 25 were my roughest, because like I was having to learn everything, like almost like, no, that's not how you do this. You need to do it this way. Like, everything down from like how to edit something, how to shoot something, in more of like a practical way, I guess. And like getting your feet wet on the ground, learning
like
from
USI probably taught your
kinda.
Beautiful lighting like you have right now, but
no. I mean, I think it was almost like USI was all like theory and like, this is the things that you'll experience. Like it was like, there were the opportunities there, but I don't know if it was as robust as it probably should have been.
Did you learn script writing at USI?
To a degree, there was a playwriting class that I took, but there was no screenwriting class.
Were you like into
the time I took it? The screenwriting aspect stuff started actually right after I got out of school. So this actually goes back to the guy who plays Pears in my movie, Kevin. Him and one of our other friends who actually is also in the movie, who plays Hollis, Jeremy.
Were these your same buddies you made that first movie with? Or
no, these are different guys. These guys are from USI. But we would go to Kevin's apartments like every Tuesday or something. And we were right out of school, and we would share our scripts. And like, that's really when I started learning more and more about screenwriting. And I had written scripts in college for like my own like short films and small things I did, but they weren't like as good as they probably needed. I mean, they're beginner scripts and stuff, but that's when we started really getting into like, I really started getting into more or less of the technical stuff and more like, you need to start writing your own stories. And really like, that's what you need to have when you're making a movie. You can't just go off of, oh, I know how to light this and shoot it and make it look pretty, you know?
I would like to say though, we started, this wasn't in the podcast, so I do want to make a mention now that we're actually recording and moving in the interview.
Oh, we are? Oh no.
Yeah, no, we've started. I didn't know. No, but you have a beautiful shot. Like the backdrop is great. The lighting is great.
Yeah.
Like so you were talking about lighting, Tom. I like to agree. That is a beautiful frame that you've set up for us. One mention though, with Kevin Arnold, Perry Pear, if you will. So is he a local as well? Like, is he from Evansville? I know you said he went to USI, but he's from Evansville. Yeah.
So Kevin's actually, he's from Newburgh.
And we'll get into more depth with the Pears film. I was just curious because that last name is a pretty common name around here, and I didn't know if maybe he knew.
Oh, Arnold is?
Yeah. I know a couple Arnolds.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know a couple, but he is from Evansville.
Yeah, he's from Evansville. Yeah. He's Newburgh, but he's from Evansville.
Interesting. Dude.
So working with the news, what's your personal camera like before you start at the news?
I had a Canon T3i. It's actually, and you see it in the movie, but I had a Canon T3i. That was my, I got that for Christmas because I was like, oh, I'm going to make movies and stuff. And even when that camera came out, it wasn't like the benchmark camera. Cause I think most people, if you were doing like your own movies and stuff, like I was fortunate when that stuff started. Cause I think prior to me getting to film, everyone was still using camcorders. And, I think it was like I don't know what it was, Canon XF1 or something like that. That was like the camera to have at that time. And it was like a camcorder, but a lot of indie people were using that as the camera to use. And then I think DSLRs came around and really started changing everything. Cause then everyone was like, oh, I can make it look like it's on film because you can have that depth of field and all these shots. And I had one of my friends, he had the Canon Mark II, or sorry, was it the 5D Mark II? And I think that was the one that everybody like jumped on the bandwagon and was like, oh, this is really cool. And I couldn't afford that. So I ended up with the like its little baby brother cousin, which was the Canon T3i. So I actually used that, and I used it actually when I was working at the TV station too. But
so when you worked at the TV station, did you ever get a chance to get like their hand-me-down equipment when they were done with it?
No.
Oh, good question. Good question. Like buying old cameras or old lenses or anything like that? Nothing?
No, well, I got close to, there was they had some lenses on some like old film, like studio film cameras they had, but I could never get it to work because they didn't have the same mounts. And it wasn't like today where you could find mounts for old lenses relatively available without it.
Well, nowadays the news uses these weird new cameras that are wild.
I do want to come back to script writing. So you were talking a little bit about how you learned a little bit about script writing at USI. So what do you think now? Let's talk about it in retrospect. What do you think the most difficult part of script writing? What is the most difficult part of script writing for you that you encounter? And again, we're going to cover your accolades later on in the interview, but
sure.
you do know how to write a really well written script. So I just want to know, like, what were some of the initial, like, toughest parts or toughest things to learn when it comes to writing a script?
Well, I think when you start out, I mean, everyone can like kind of write a story, and you just you're like, because I have a friend who I was just talking to the other day, and she's like, hey, I have the story idea, I just want to run it by you. And she sent it to me, and I'm looking at it, and it's like there's tons of like, it's not written like how a script should be written.
Well, watch out. Be careful, because she might watch this podcast. No, I'm joking.
Note to self, Brian. I'm not going to send him my short film idea, you know?
Yeah. But she said that. I mean, she knew that. She told me, she's like, I know it's not in the proper format, but like, what do you think of the story? And I'm like, when you come into the basis of that, it's like everybody, I think most people, and I think like Ron Howard said something like this, like everyone can be a filmmaker or something like that. But from the perspective of like everyone has an idea of a story, and like you can, and people will like you would write that story out on the page. But I think when it comes to like how that's supposed to look on a script, that's a different animal, because there are formatting things, but also not just like where you put things on a script, but also how something should be read. And that stuff gets really tricky, because when I remember like an example being like when I wrote earlier scripts, I'd write all this description of what the room looked like, and like, there's 2 tables and 2 chairs sitting on this opposite side, and there's over details of all this stuff, and you don't need that when you're writing a script typically. And it's like those little hurdles you start getting past as you're writing, and the more you write, the more you read of other people's scripts, especially professional Hollywood movie scripts, you start seeing like, oh, okay, I just need to kind of paint a little picture in everyone's mind as you're reading the script to kind of get that. And then the other big hurdle is really kind of understanding like your story structure and how every story kind of is broken down. I think at one point I was a YouTube video or something, and being introduced to Save the Cat, which is like kind of a very beginner's 101 on script writing book, where it kind of breaks down the typical beats of any movie. And like not every movie follows those beats verbatim, but they're usually there. Like there's usually like, okay, story starts out, something happens to the characters, an inciting incident. Then we push into our second act, and then things get tougher for the character. Eventually we get somewhere in the middle and things really get tough. The bad guy starts closing in, things get really bad for the character. And then you get like 3/4 the way through the movie, and then something really bad happens and the character fails or falls, and then they have a moment of somebody picking them back up, or they have some inspirational moment, and then the third act is usually him solving, or he or she solving the problem, or saving the day or something. And sometimes it can go the other way. Sometimes the end is they fail, so.
And then on that, how applicable is Save the Cat to... That sounds like a very like generic, like you were explaining, like a very generic guideline for like a film. But how can that be applied to like all film genre? Can you like do that with a horror film? Like, is the skeleton structure roughly the same?
I think I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street, and I think Nightmare on Elm Street is a perfect
That's a banger
perfect
film
movie that you can go, yeah, it's very similar to that, because the story is about these kids, and the problem they're trying to face is they have to fend off Freddy Krueger.
Stay
and
awake.
they know they have to stay awake. And so the beginning is there's a murder of one of the other kids in town. The main kids kind of are all like, oh, you know, what happened to so and so, and then someone else experience it. That's kind of like the inciting incident. And then eventually they're like, okay, we got to stay awake. And of course, through the course of the film, throughout the second act, that's when all of these characters start getting killed off. And I think it's when her boyfriend gets killed is kind of the Dark Night of the Soul, the really bad moment at the end of the second act.
That's
Johnny Depp, right?
That was Johnny Depp's one of his first major roles. And I don't think Johnny Depp was in The Outsiders. Was he?
I'm not sure, but I do like I've been in that kick lately of when I watch movies being like, all right, this is the first act. And then I'm like, wait, okay, the second act just started, and all right, now we're hitting the third. Yeah. Like just
naturally segmenting it. Yeah.
Right.
You can feel it. If once you watch enough movies, you start to pick up on it, which sometimes can be a blessing and a curse, because you're watching a movie and you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Like if I sit through my kids' movies, it's like, okay, it's probably going to happen at this point, or like, or you can kind of look at your watch.
Some more adversity, and they're going to
something. Yeah, something's going to happen. You're like, all right,
sounds like you're a magician. What? How did you?
How'd you know that?
We were talking about different genres, though, but like, what do you find that is? Do you think that all, like, when it comes specifically to the tools that you need to create a film, like, is the skeleton structure, short of obviously the story you're trying to tell, but is the skeleton structure of creating a film the same through all genres, or does it vary a bit when you're talking about like a horror film versus a rom-com versus just a regular comedy versus, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, well, what you're describing is like the structure of a story is usually always the same. Like if you break down story into the simplest form, I think most people will tell you it's about a character who has a goal, and there's a conflict that he or she has to face to achieve that goal. And whether they achieve the goal or not, it doesn't matter. But that is typically, take any story, and I guarantee you'll find a character who wants something or needs something, and they have to face some sort of conflict to get to that thing. And so that is true for every story. So if you're talking about just different genres, yeah, if there's a rom-com, it's guy meets girl, you know, guy loses girl, guy gets girl back. If it's a horror film, you know, it's essentially a survival story. You know, villain appears, it's going to kill the kids. They have to figure out a way to escape. You know, like there's always
one lives.
It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter what genre.
So I was going to get back
kind of
on track here a little bit. So when you're working at the news station, are you writing any films? Are you making anything on your own on the side? What's that like while you're...
Oh, yeah. So I'd made a couple of... like short films. We actually had me and my friend, he had ran a film festival called the Mayday Film Festival. That was like one of the... it was in Evansville. And it ran for like 10 years. And it was right after we got out of USI, and I had made shorts in college, and then I had made some smaller shorts coming out of college when I started working, and sometimes I'd enter those into the festival. And then by the time my job had changed, actually in the midst of working at 25, where I started first 3 years, I was working in news, and then I got promoted and I was working in a different department, which was creative services. And I was working on the promos for 25. And so during that period of time, I actually had started making another short film, other short films. One of them was I won a couple awards on and stuff, and had gone to some festivals, and it also had Kevin in it. So I had been doing short films throughout that entire period of time.
How hard is that to juggle that? Like you were just you had mentioned that you had just gotten promoted to handle like now you're moving up the rungs, you know what I mean? Like you're showing your worth to your company, your 9-to-5 job. How hard is it to do your due diligence for work, but then also here you, on the other hand, you're over here trying to like create meaningful, beautiful art, and somehow you're winning awards with that, you know what I mean? Like, what is that balance like?
I think sometimes it's like a sacrifice. Like sometimes you're slacking at work a little bit because you're like, hey, we're gonna schedule this out, and you're like working on that when you probably should be working on work kind of things.
Yeah.
So that's probably what kind of happens is you're just like, I don't really care about this project I'm working on right now, or I have a little downtime. Like, let me just type this out real quick or come up with this thing and then say, hey, this one, we're going to film this or whatever. So I think that's kind of what happens.
Okay.
But yeah.
So then let's get in. We'll probably skip, like hit fast forward here or whatever. But like, when did you get the idea for Pears?
What's the gap on that? What's the time gap too, by the way? So like you're working from the news and then to Pears.
Okay. So I worked, real fast. So I, 2018, still working at the TV station around 2018. I had both my sisters and their husbands were living here in Atlanta. And so I wanted to get into film. The job that I had at the time was starting to really change. Things over there have changed dramatically since I was there, and I didn't like where they were going. And I just looked around. I'm like, this is dead end. I don't want to be here anymore.
We've all had a job like that.
It's like, this is not what I wanted to do. I want to go someplace. I want to be creative. But I really wanted to get in the film industry. So we moved to Atlanta, and then in Atlanta, I was working as a background for about a year, and eventually became a production assistant. And now, which is what I've been doing.
So is your name on like all the credits of everything that you're in now? Is that cool?
Not everything, but if you watch any seasons of Sweet Magnolias, I'm on every season. So
nice, dude.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, everybody knows Sweet Magnolias, dude.
But is that pretty cool?
It's on Netflix.
Like,
at first it's like, it's so cool, and then you're like, whatever. After
do you just get burnt out on like what you're doing for the production team? Do you get burnt out on like the project, or like what is it? Because you were saying you're kind of like, whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, I meant like I'm more like, whatever. If my name's in the credits, I'm like, it's just like, you're just like, I've been here before. It's nothing new. Like I've done it. You
get to add it to your resume.
Yeah.
So I wonder what like does your resume have each project you worked on it?
Yeah.
Wait, do you have a resume?
I do.
Oh, nice, dude. I don't know how the film industry works.
Well, like in the film industry, it's different, and it's a lot of it's just like, I worked on this show, and this show, and this show.
Yeah.
This, and like I have a list of everything that I worked that I was staffed on, meaning I was there from the beginning to the end of the show, and then I have another list of shows that I just day played on, which just means like, hey, we have a big day, we need more PAs, we're hiring day players just to be here for the day, and that's what that's sometimes what you're cutting your teeth doing after a while. And so I have like a list of all the movies and all the TV shows that I've worked out. But so you were asking me about, so yeah, that was kind of the jump. I moved here. Eventually I'm like, hey, I want to make a short film, or not for a short film. I want to make a feature film, my first feature film. I was like, well, I already had it in my mind that I was going to come back to Evansville to film it in Evansville, because I knew I had connections. I knew the people, I knew locations. I had better connections in Evansville. And also, like, if you're going to film something in Atlanta, I think the expectation especially is, if you're going to do something, it's probably going to be a short film, because, you're going to try to get a camera guy and all these things, and they're going to expect money out of you, especially if you're trying to get people who work typically in the business. And I think the expectations are different. Coming to Evansville, where people are more willing to be like, no, I just want to be a part of the project. Sounds really cool. Plus, I knew everybody. I knew people who would want to be a part of something like this. So, but that was kind of first. I knew, okay, I want to film in Evansville, and then the inspiration kind of came from I would be coming back and forth from work and listening to audiobooks, and I was listening to a bunch of old Philip Marlowe books by this author named Raymond Chandler, and Raymond Chandler wrote all of his stories, the Philip Marlowe books that he wrote, they're all the detective stories. They're basically the main inspiration for what people today call film noir. If and any cartoon or anything that has ever parodied it, it's always the detective in the room with the giant fan and the what am I saying? The
shit hitting the fan.
the shit hitting, not the shit hitting the fan, the blinds. Sorry, the light coming through the blinds.
Oh
and then
yeah,
the
lights.
hot chick comes in.
Yeah, there's smoke in the room,
and it's smoke in the room, and it's black and white.
No one
like,
knows why this lady's wearing a fancy red diamond dress, but she is.
Right. She comes in and she's like, my husband's dead, or like someone, you know, and that's and it's usually like my husband's dead. Someone murdered him. Find out, you know, like there's always like some kind of parody of that you've probably seen on television, but like that's the genre that people associate as film noir. And so I knew I wanted to do that, but and I'd been reading I'd listened to all these books, and they're all about these detective stories about these hard-boiled detectives. So I knew, okay, that's what I want. I want to do like a story about that, but like, what if it's like a modern day version of that, like an actual PI? So I did a little bit of research of what real PIs kind of do, which does end up in the movie a little bit. And so I kind of wanted to do that. And I knew Kevin was going to be in it. I knew he was going to probably play the lead. So I kind of based everything around him a little bit, where I knew, okay, I think Kevin could probably play this kind of character. And then it kind of slowly, as I was writing it, kind of just turned itself into a comedy. It wasn't like I went into it going like, this is going to be a comedy. It was, oh, okay, I think this can be funny, you know, and then slowly changes.
So how much
let's
time?
park there. Hold on. Let's park there. Cause that's interesting that it did not start as a comedy.
Yeah.
So now I want to go back to your, like the origin story of Pears, like where you originally saw it. Cause clearly it's a comedy. Clearly it's so funny. But that being said, like were you thinking that it was going to be like a modern day noir? Is that kind of what you were thinking? Like it was going to be like,
I had done other movies that were a little more. I'd done other movies that were like that were supposed to be like a little more gritty and black and white and stuff. And my brain went, I don't want to necessarily do that. But I was thinking like, oh yeah, it could be more of a noir, but I was thinking more in terms of like, what is this mystery this detective has to solve? What did that story end up becoming? And then that story for me was, okay, it's about a guy who is trying to find his place in this world, trying to figure out what he wants to do in life. And he just so happens on becoming a private eye. And I've had people in my own life where I felt like, I had a journey or I had a goal or something I was aspiring to do. And then you have somebody else who's like, I want to do that too. And they're trying to like coattail you into what you're doing. And you're like, whoa, hold on. This is my thing. You find your own thing kind of thing. And I felt like that was kind of what I was trying to encapsulate in this script, was that he's trying to find something. He ends up on being a private eye. His brother-in-law is like an actual private eye who's a professional who knows how this business is run. And so he's trying to learn all the ropes from this guy, and this guy goes missing. So then what does he have to do? He has to find his brother-in-law to go and track him down, because his so happens his sister is pregnant, and like his sister's like, yeah, you got to go find my husband because he's gone missing, and you're the only one
giving birth in the next 72 hours.
Yeah.
So figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask.
Oh my God.
So like a short film alone, yet alone a feature film, is a lot of equipment and a lot of storage and all that stuff. So like you mentioned previously, but like your angles being recorded on a Blackmagic camera, great for filmmaking. But like, what was it like, the process of most videographers, people that are into film, like it's grinding up equipment, taking jobs, raising money, buying more equipment, and just grinding up your kit basically. So like, when did you get your Blackmagic camera? Like, when did you feel like you finally had enough equipment to cover every aspect of film?
Some of that equipment I've had over the years, like, and a lot of it I had acquired back when I was living in Evansville. So like a tripod, like everything down to like just a tripod or some stands or light stands and stuff I had acquired over the years. Some of them were Christmas gifts, so I would like ask like, hey, I really want this for Christmas or whatever, and I would get it. But not like the big expensive stuff, just some certain things like some lights and things like that. So I had acquired things slowly over time, even down to like just a lens or the camera. Like the camera though, I saved up for, because I really, really wanted that camera at the time. And I had and some of that money that I had saved up was from just from work and stuff. And so I'd saved up money for that. And then when it came time to make the movie, there was a little bit of a gap where I was like, I kind of need these things to make this film, including the light that we're using. So I told my wife, it's like, hey, we're doing this movie. I had money I'd saved up actually for the DGA, which would have been for being a PA. You have to get in the DGA to become an assistant director. You have to have like 600 days. And you also have to pay like an entry fee basically when you join the DGA, like any other union. So I was saving my money up because it's like, okay, it's 600 days, it's $6,000, it's $10 for every paycheck for every day that you work. So I was saving up my money every time I was working. But I got to a point where it's like, I have a bunch of money that I've saved up that I'm not using. Maybe I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. I'm going to spend some of that for making a movie. And so that's kind of what we did. But
so
I
all
saved
the $3,000 for Pears was from yourself?
Some of it. I think Lily and I decided like, yeah, we can use a little bit here and there, but because my wife was the other financial side of this movie, so she was one of the producers. So we were like, yeah, let's just take some money to put this thing together. So yeah, we basically spent our own money to make the movie, and some of that was I need a light that's a little bit more punchy, which is the light that you're seeing on this, and then I needed some audio equipment that. Particularly, I wanted to have lav mics to be able to get very good audio with the actors so that you could hear them, especially if they're from a far distance instead of having to use a boom mic. So that was the other like piece of equipment that I didn't have. But most everything else I had acquired over time to make the movie.
And then on that, because I'm an audio guy, I like audio a lot. I'm a big fan of it sounding. If you're filming something, if you're recording something, I'm a big fan of like a nice microphone. I think the audio in the film was spectacular. I love the way you transition phone calls. Everything worked out really, really well. The audio was tip top. So the one thing I'm not familiar with, and I have little to no experience with because I've never worked on a film, is boom versus like a lapel or a lav mic or like a Rode mic, something you can clip onto the person themselves. But like, what is the difference? I mean, why don't major Hollywood films just do lav mics? Like, what do you gain from a boom that you don't get from a lav mic?
I think there's actually a couple things. The problem with lav mics are really great for distance. So you can hide a mic, you can put it on someone like every actor we had
far away. Yeah,
you can be farther away, and every actor we had, we string up this lav mic. I had 2 lav mics. String them up. It's the kind of like the Rode clips you're talking about. We used the 7. I don't know what their name. I have them somewhere. I don't remember the names. The 7 rims, I think is what they're called. But we use those. It's very similar to those. Like they kind of a new piece of technology, the Bluetooth tech, type thing. Instead of clipping it, you actually we put the lav mic, plug that in, put it on their back, and then we'd string it up, and then put some moleskin tape kind of close to them so you could hear them fairly clearly. And it would be better than if it was just on the boom. But there were a lot of times sometimes where you would, if a character got too close and they ruffled up next to the other character, sometimes this wasn't going to work. So you had to use the boom. There's times when characters don't even have, they're shirtless. So you can't put a mic there. So it's good to use a boom. But I've also talked to sound people on movies, and they usually say like a lot of times they'll use the boom more than you think they would. They would use the boom over using the lav, but sometimes the lav sounded better. So it's just kind of a mix between whatever you wanted to use. And this I think that's
like the standard the standard thought process when you're picturing a Hollywood film. There's a guy standing here with a giant microphone. Like
I use the wireless lavalier mics when I film weddings, and you're getting their vows, and they're at all the way at the other end of the aisle or whatever, and
it works out. Yeah, it sounds beautiful.
Very nice.
No, I did want to compliment you on that. The audio was great in the film.
The audio was great, and then also like Brian was mentioning when like technology was pieced in, like the sounds were there, but then like also like the on-screen transition, like everything, like it's like you didn't miss any of the like little details that you would normally find in something like that.
I do love the tech that you use in the film, the way that the even from like the MacBook login to like anytime he looks at his phone, Kevin, that is. Or my favorite scene is in the very early part of the film when he's at the park and he's listening to the YouTube video.
Yeah.
Pristine, brother. That was so great. That was so great. You know, it's illegal to be inside somebody without their permission anyways. I mean, it was so.
I have to give credit to my editor on a lot of that. So
did you make a YouTube video for that, and then post it on YouTube?
Yeah, so we do. So the guy who was the editor in the movie. Well, we didn't post it on YouTube. It on YouTube. The guy that was the editor on my movie, his name's Charlie. Charlie and I go back. We've been friends since.
Shout out to Charlie, dude.
Charlie's instrumental in a lot of the edit stuff, and some of it was also some of the audio stuff because I had another friend who did some of the sound editing as well. Was Daniel Roche was doing all the music for, and Daniel's here in Evansville. He's
music
actually
was phenomenal
technically. Too. But he did all the music for the movie, with the exception of one song that's in the film. But as far as that scene that you're talking about, though, the Charlie, that was his I was like, Charlie, can you make this video? I just need some video that you would find on YouTube. And it's actually a joke it's supposed to be a joke. We're making fun of Kevin because Kevin also has his YouTube channel, and in his YouTube channel he'll say, it's Kever, because he does these Nintendo videos. And so that's why he says, it's the lock guy. And I just told Charlie, I said, Charlie, I need you to just hit these points, but whatever. So he added a lot of that, opening your mom's legs on Christmas and all that stuff.
Oh, so good.
That was all him. But
so
yeah,
good.
we put that in the film. And basically, I think the day we shot it, we just had him had it. So we had the recording version of it, and he had made it so he just sent it to me on a phone, so it would just fit here perfectly and play it out like a normal video would.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just filmed that, so I had the sound coming off that, so it sounded like it was in world, and then we also had and he also had the sound, so in case we had an issue there. But that's kind of how we put that.
It was just so subtle, and he's doing his own thing over here, listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and it's just so subtle. Yeah. I just thought that was very.
So I guess
very
being
well
in
played.
the film world, you have all the audio yourself that from on scene of the shoot, and then you have background music, and then you have sound effects. So do you have a guy that sits there and merges all three to in throughout the clip, or what's your process in the whole Pears?
Oh, that was a nightmare. That was the last little bit, and that was a little bit of a nightmare. So I'd sent it to Kevin, or not Kevin, sorry. I'd sent it to Daniel. So we had, once we finished the film, I had sent everything to Charlie, and he had started cutting it together. The first cut of the movie I didn't like, which is true for every director who's sends their film off to somebody else to do, because you look at it and you're like, that's not what I wanted. And so we had gone through, and I went up to he's up in Indianapolis, up in Carmel actually, and so I would drive up there, spend a couple days, and we'd go through the entire movie, and then I'd have all my notes with everything that I wanted to fix and tweak. And we did a first pass of just the edit and kind of locking that down. I would come back home, do the color, and then we did another. I'd come back up there, we do another pass, and then I'd sent it. We were having trouble sending it back and forth between our sound guy, but eventually we got something that was, but it wasn't just the files. I mean, we had to send basically a hard drive back and forth at times, but we'd send some of the files via online.
Yeah.
But some of those files weren't as big as you'd think they were. But then, we'd edit those. And then when we finally were coming down to mix the whole thing in, we'd make sure okay, the sound has to sound this high here, should sound low here. We need to add a sound effect under this, or have some ambient noise of birds chirping under this. This is where the music's going to come in here, those things. So that was just a whole process towards the end of getting
how much finished. With everything recorded, how much storage space do you think it took up?
Probably 2 terabytes. It wasn't that much as you think it would be. But our film was, which just blows everyone's mind. They're 2 terabytes? No way.
But everything filmed in 4K.
Silly.
Yeah.
That is silly.
Not necessarily though, because if you think about it, each podcast we do film, we tend to film, what do we do? Film 3 angles at 4K and an on-screen
One's
recording.
being 180 gigs. Yeah.
Yeah, an episode.
200 gigs. per
and that's like
episode.
an hour and a half a straight. So
I
like
want to come back to the ambient noise and the score. That was actually one of my questions I had. You have a lot of like the ambient noise. I wasn't really considering that, but a lot of like the just the weird little guitar riffs, like 90s TV show, like wow,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you did really well with that, and I think that was a great little addition for certain emotions you're trying to key up. But that being said, I wanted to know where did you get all the tracks? I guess I know you had mentioned earlier in the interview one guy kind of handled most of the score except for one song. I guess can we talk a little bit about the score? Like who was? Did you already say the name of the gentleman or the gentle lady?
Yeah.
That did the
So
score?
Daniel Roach, who did the score, he'd
Daniel
actually done
Roach.
score. Daniel's in Evansville. He's near you guys. He lives in Boonville. I think he did, or I don't know if I should say that on here is where
I
he
live
works.
there.
Oh no! Don't do that. Don't drop any dimes.
He works at this. This is his address. But Daniel, no, I
Social
met
security
Daniel.
number. No.
So Daniel and I we worked together. Actually, I met Daniel back when we were at USI, and he was there my freshman year. He was working in the TV station there at USI for the like TV class type stuff. He left after my freshman year. He ended up going to Murray State. I ran into him years later. We were working at the TV station. He's working creative services. I was working in news. Eventually, I make that leap over to creative services. So what he would be doing is he was doing commercials, a lot of car commercial type stuff. But he was always, his thing has always been music. So he was always into music. And then some of my other short films before this, I asked if he could do the scores for. And so he did a lot of scores for other things that I had done prior leading up to this. So I already knew that like, oh yeah, I want Daniel to do the score for the film. And we had talked about the score for this, and I didn't want to go with the like we talked about the noir type story. I didn't want to do the noir music, but I wanted to do something a little bit more fresh but fun. And I was like, for some reason I started getting into surf rock, and I wanted that surf rock feel for it. And maybe it also could have been stemmed from Tarantino. Like if you watch Pulp Fiction, the opening of Pulp Fiction, there's a lot of like surf rock in that movie. It could have stemmed from that. And I just, for some reason, thought like on some wavelength, like, oh yeah, that's what I want from music wise. So that's where that came from. And then the little like,
what was the one song that Daniel doesn't
do? Yeah. So there's another guy that I worked with at the station. His name was Kurt Johnson, and he has a punk band that I don't even know if they perform anymore. I have no idea. But the band was called God 2 is the name of the band.
God 2.
And he had all these songs, and I liked punk music growing up in high school and stuff. And I wanted to include that in, like, I wanted something in the movie, like a set, especially when he's like driving and following him. I wanted something there. And it's turned out he had all these songs. He had done this EP a while back. And I was like, oh yeah, or an LP, whatever. I don't remember what it's, I think it's EP. It's the right term, right? He had an EP of all these songs that he had done. And I was like, dude, can I use this for like a trailer or use it in my movie? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he had them free online, so he didn't really care. And so I was like, we were listening to all the tracks, and the one that I stuck out was Road. It was, the title of it is Road. The lyrics of the song are like, I'm a road man. I'm on the road, man. Jeff Gordon. It's like the dumbest thing. And so Charlie and I are sitting there editing the movie, and like I get the song, we're like, all right, well, this is the song we're gonna use. So we cut it to that. And we were like, every day as we were editing the movie, we would be like singing that song and like watching.
I'm a road man. I'm on the road, man.
The road man. Like,
so follow-up questions.
Well, Brian's seen some editing too. It's like you listen to. Like I'm editing somebody's speech right now, and like I've listened to the speech so many times, but then like you rewind it to make sure that the cut's exactly right, and you keep doing it over and over. So like I'm sure you listened to that snippet of the song a million times.
We listened to the whole song,
burned in your DNA.
Well, no, we would listen to it, and once we had it edited, we would like just sit there watching it, just listening to the song, and
then Tom, to come out of the remix.
Tom, I have a follow-up question on the how what was I going to go with? How how underestimated, or how, at what importance level do you typically, you're going to do more films moving forward? If you're not working on one right now, I'm sure you will be in the very near future, which we can talk about later. But that being said, how underestimated is the score in film?
I think
how underrated do other directors or maybe other,
I don't know if I could speak to other directors, but what I have noticed when I go to film festivals is sometimes the score seems like it's an afterthought. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people make their movie, they finish it. And I have friends who do this too, is that like, I need a score. But instead of going to somebody who's like willing to go, yeah, I want to write your score, I want to make music for this, I want to be like a John Williams or Michael Cimino or something like that. They go, okay, let me go online, find a royalty free. Like there's these websites that will
absolutely
they advertise, and they're like, yeah, you can get all this music and all these stuff. And those are great for like little, especially industrial and promotional things. Those things are great. Or wedding videos. Like you need some like romantic music, podcasts, you know. But like when you're making a movie and and you're making a little indie film that's going to go into these film festivals, what you'll find is that you're like, I heard that song in like 2 other short films because it was like, oh, this is a really good creepy song, I'm going to reuse it. Instead of going, oh, I know somebody who can make some really dope music. Hey, do you want to collaborate? Do you want to make some music for my movie? And I'll put you'll be the guy who makes the composer.
Are you familiar, Ryan? Are you familiar with the name Peter Berg?
No, I don't.
He's the gentleman who directed the film Friday Night Lights. He also did Lone Survivor. And also I think he's directing the show Landman, maybe here nor there. He's a phenomenal director. And I'm a big music guy. Obviously, I'm into audio. So, like, I really care. Maybe I care more about the score sometimes than I do the film, which can be unfortunate. Like, it's just a characteristic of mine. But I find that, like, if your music has a way of, like, in unlocking an emotion in a human being, and I feel like if you're trying to do that in a film, unlock an emotion in a certain frame or a certain scene, the only way to heighten that is to have like a good coinciding score. Yeah. Peter Berg, I highly suggest you check some of his stuff out, but like his scores are just like perfect. Like perfect. Yeah, he's so good at picking, and he uses a lot of like bands that make music that is already instrumental. And he just finds a way. And I just want to get your thoughts on that. Like what you think the importance of like a score is when it comes to a film, or unlocking a piece of emotion, or like unlocking an emotion with this piece of art you're trying to create. You know what I mean?
It's funny you bring that up, because I remember specifically when I worked back in the TV station, not so much for the movie, but I remember when I worked in the TV station, I was doing that thing where you had to look up, you're like, I need to find I'm doing a promo on this thing, and I need to find a song for this. There were multiple times where I remember looking for a piece of music, and, my boss is like, it should be, if you need to look for something, like, you look up the emotion, you like sad, or, this or that, or maybe you're looking for something that's uplifting. Maybe you're looking up for something that is mournful, those types of things. The thing that I found was interesting, sometimes you could really change the perspective of what someone thought they wanted just by the music. I had one promo because we would do the sweeps period, and that sweeps being, that's when they do all the ratings for all the television shows. So all the news outlets are trying to find these really meaty stories to really gain viewers for that period. And we would get these sweep stories that were like really sentimental things. And I remember one story was about this. The story, I think, was called Devotion, and it was about this man who was going to take care of his wife, and his wife wasn't going to be in hospice. Or I might have that backwards, but she wasn't going to go to hospice. She wanted to stay home, and it was like his devotion to his wife. And it was a really heartbreaking story. And I remember the reporter working on it wanted the story to sound, he was like, he thought the music should be sad. And I was like, no, the music should be uplifting, because this is an uplifting story. And when he heard it, he was shocked. He was like, oh, wait, that actually works better. And I'm like, yeah. So sometimes, like, when you're describing is interesting, because I think sometimes we just go to the obvious. It's like, oh, sad story, sad song. But sometimes maybe you want a little bit, maybe you want something a little some more flavor to it, and you can still kind of get the emotion across that you want, or the feeling you want across, by just finding a song that might just be slightly off the beaten path of what you wanted. Going back to Pears, that was kind of what I wanted, was that I didn't want to do the obvious, which would have been, if I did the obvious, it would have been, oh yeah, let's do jazz and horns and make it sound like a old timey film noir.
Yeah,
like,
suspenseful. Do.
I didn't want to do that necessarily, but I was like, do something similar to it in the type of music. So I went, well, let's do surf rock. Let's do something that's kind of got a 90s vibe, something that's kind of chill. And that was kind of what ended up in the movie anyway. Like, the movie ended up that way anyway. But I think the music's very important when you're making a movie.
And then before Tom asks his next question, Tom is going to ask a question here. I just want to give a shout out to Eric DeLong, who helped with a short film here in town. He's a great scorer. I don't know what the right term is for that.
Composer?
Composer, yes. He's an excellent composer. Excellent composer. Shout out to Eric DeLong.
So I was going to say Pears is available, or soon available, on Prime Video and Tubi. So like, I don't know many short films that have made it on those. So like, what was that process like, getting on those platforms?
And congratulations too. That's sweet.
So it's actually just on, currently as of this recording, it's just on Amazon Prime Video to own or rent. I do see that I have a license for Tubi. I don't know when that's gonna happen, but eventually it'll be on Tubi, which is cool. So I went through Film Hub for distribution. Film Hub is like a website where you can, there's some stipulations, there's things you have to do, but basically it's just a film distributor. They will basically, you get your film up there, you give it a pitch, it's a little bit of a sales pitch, some artwork, so that like when they do sell it to some of these outlets, they have artwork that they can use, like the poster and whatnot.
Of course, yeah.
So they have all that stuff. And then you also have to the big thing you have to have is subtitles, because they need to have the closed caption for it, or else they can't really do anything with that for a lot of these outlets. And it has to be in a high format, or like a giant file size. So that was kind of the process. And that was like, it took, because I finished that movie in September, and like right after September, I was like, all right, I'm going to try to get on Film Hub. After we premiered the movie, and I was working on that, and that process took a long time just to get the subtitles and get all the art. Like, I had to go into Photoshop, making all the artwork pieces and doing all that stuff. So that was
all
really
that came after your first premiere for the video.
Yeah, and then I found out that it's like, oh cool, I'll upload. I finally get it approved and uploaded, and then you sit and wait, kept checking back the website. Nothing. Yeah. Check back the website. Nothing. Eventually, it said Amazon Prime Video. I was like, oh, sweet. And then I talked to my buddy who had done the same process, and he's like, oh, it'd be like 2 weeks when I got it on there. And I was like, okay. 2 weeks go by, nothing. Another 2 weeks go by, nothing. By that point, I was just like, I gave up. I was like, whatever. This isn't nothing's happening. And then eventually, it wasn't until like recently in January that just randomly, so my buddy calls me. He's like, hey, congratulations. I'm like, on what? He's like, you didn't see it? I'm like, what? Pears is on Amazon Prime. I was like, oh, cool. So then, at least I was like, oh, good. I didn't waste all this time doing this. And so, and then a couple days after that, then I think the Tubi license had popped up, but I'm still waiting to see when that'll be on Tubi.
That's wild, dude. Do you ever look back? Do you look back now? Because you said you wrapped in September. What was that? September of 22? No. We wrapped the movie. So we shot it in June of 2023. Was it June of 2023, and you wrapped in September of 2023? Well, we finished the film. We finished it. The movie was finished in September 2024. Finished edit, everything, movie done. Year was in 2024. Basically. Yeah, much longer than I wanted it to be. Do you look back now? And you're like, wow, I have a piece of art on Amazon Video. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that? Yeah. That sentence is wild to say out loud. I don't know. Again, like, I might just be jaded, but I'm just kind of like,
it's on there. That's cool. Like I'm just like I did
Crazy,
it, you know. But then I'm like I gotta, trying to think of what's the next thing. Move on to the next thing.
Are
whatever
a
that
lot
might
of
be,
your
you know.
peers in your like 9 to 5 career, like, do they all have short films and stuff like that? Is that why you might be jaded to it?
I don't know what it is. I think it's just I have some peers, some other filmmakers that I know. I think I don't know if you guys know Jacob Belinsky. He's in the movie. He's in Evansville, but he's made several film like features, not just short films, but several features and shorts. And he has a couple of films that are on those outlets and stuff. And I don't know if it's just that, where it's like I know people that have done this, and it's like, oh, that's really cool, or if it's just it's like you have that goal and you get there, and then you're like, okay, now what? Like I don't know what's next. That's kind of maybe that's what it is.
You get to that mountaintop and you realize, hey, there's another mountaintop.
Exactly. You're like, okay, what's the next thing?
I want to stay on Pears before we get too far into the future of what the future holds for Mr. McCurdy. But on Pears, like, what was one of like your most memorable moments shooting that film? You know what I mean? Because you're there day in and day out, each day on shoot day.
Man!
So do you have like a BTS favorite moment, like somebody pooped in a bucket or something? I don't know. It could be anything. Do you have like a?
There are a couple. There are a couple fun
Is
stories.
it on camera?
I don't have anything like that.
Oh, dang.
I think I'm trying to recall what specific, like if there was one specific one that really stands out. And I think the one that I like to talk about the most is when we shot at the Esquire Inn.
Oh yeah.
Because
Pears Avenue.
Yeah. Because I have to explain, every time I talk about this, I have to preface that story with, so anyway, in Evansville, there's this strip that is notorious for prostitution, or has been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to preference that. And at least you guys get that
by the
you're
hour.
in Evansville. Which is always funny to me.
So
but
great.
when we started the movie, I knew I wanted that, because you watch a movie, typically when you watch a movie and they go to a motel, especially in the like old noirs and stuff, they're not going to like a big hotel,
no,
like
it's a seedy,
Holiday Inn.
Yeah, it's a
seedy hotel.
Yeah.
And those typically look like more like motels, like they have the the old 1-story kind of thing. And that's what I wanted in the movie. I wanted to shoot there. And I had some pushback from people in the film that were like, I don't know if we should be, like they like, are you sure? I'm like, it's gonna be fine, guys. It's gonna be fine. They're not gonna care.
Yeah, there's a camera.
Right.
God.
So when we went there that day, we actually secured the location the day of, which was scary because everything else, like I knew everybody who worked at these other places, and we'd already scheduled ahead. And like, okay, we're going to film at your place at this day, whatever. This was one where I'm like, it has to be this day, because I had already created the schedule, and I was really concerned that like, if we didn't get this, we were going to be screwed.
All the rooms are going to be taken up during the hours of the best sunlight.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a 2-hour window during slow hour season for the hooker. My bad, lady of the evening.
Yeah, lady of the evening. Can't say.
So we
hooker.
get there. So I had a connection. My Lily, my wife, who's the other producer, her uncle was like willing to help us out. I was like, yeah, I think I can help you get some locations and stuff. And I guess he knew that they did some stuff through his church, through the ministry, to for homeless people to get rooms and stuff there, especially when it was cold out, I think. And so I think he knew that particular one. There was another one down the street that I was more was like, oh, I think this location looks better, but we weren't able to secure that. We go there the day of. He's kind of talking to the owner, the guy there, and he's like, I gotta wait till the owner gets in. She's gonna get in at this time. And I was like, we got to start filming by noon at least. And we got there early in the morning. Eventually the owner got there. I explained her the situation and said, hey, I'm going to shoot this movie. We're willing to buy the room. Like, we'll rent the room out like anybody else would. We'll just
buy
be
the
shooting.
hour.
Buy the But we were like, oh, I can rent it for the day, whatever.
You could rent it back out when I'm done.
we're gonna shoot
so
this
sorry.
movie. Like I explained to her, like it's a movie. We're shooting this feature film. It's an indie, low budget movie. You know, we'll have actors. They'll come in. We're gonna shoot this scene. And she was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "You're not gonna do anything illegal, right?" It's like, no, we're not doing anything illegal, because I think she thought we were filming in a hotel room. Like that sounds shady
Right.
enough.
Like an adult film, maybe.
Like yeah, it's like no. So we're not doing anything illegal.
It's not
we're
like
shooting
that.
a movie. It's not like that. Which is the worst part about when you start making movies and people, you talk about, oh yeah, we're shooting a movie. Like, oh, you're doing a porno. I'm like, no,
Yeah,
no,
immediately, no.
Yeah, that's not what we're shooting. So she's like, oh, okay. And I explained to her, it's like, we will be having like a fake gun prop, but like we will make sure everybody knows, like, and it's just going to be in the room. So we're not going to be running around your property doing anything crazy or anything like that. So she was actually like, oh, okay, all right, cool. And like, so we got the room. But the funny part of the story was that when we got the room, they had 2 available. The guy's like, well, we have these people that are moving. We have to get them out of the room because they haven't finished, they haven't paid or whatever. So we're kicking them out. I said, okay, cool. So these folks bring all their stuff. Like it was like the full room of stuff. I don't know what they had there, but they was just like everything they owned. They got it and they put it in this back of this pickup truck. And it was this guy and this girl and this woman. And but they stuck around throughout the day, which that was weird. I was like, why are they still around? And like this woman was like sitting in the like not lobby, but there was like a back hallway and where that particular place was. In the movie, when you're watching it, there's not actually an outdoor staircase when he leads up to that balcony area. When he goes to the door, that door he's actually going to is the back door of that room. It's not actually the main front door that you would take to get into that place. And so we shot so we're in the process of setting up the cameras, getting all this stuff. They cleaned the room for us, which was nice. So like we had like the people at the hotel. Yep. Like I watched them like bleach all the floors, everything, because that was a concern of some people that were like, I don't know how I feel about being in this hotel room and everything. So we washed everything off.
Yeah.
And I get it. So we got all our gear. We got everything loaded. We have everything's in the room. We're all ready to shoot. We were shooting shooting all that scenes where like he's going through the room and she comes in and everything. Yeah. And then intermittently between that time, I was like walking downstairs and coming back upstairs, and we shot all day. Like it was a longer day. We stopped. I think we were there from like 12 noon to like midnight or something crazy like that. Or maybe like 10 o'clock, but it was late. And so, but at some point I walk downstairs, I see this woman and she looks like she was maybe in her 50s, maybe. Okay. And I walk past her and, you know, she's not bothering anybody. And then like her friend or boyfriend or whatever is around. And then I walk past her again. I'm going back up to the room and she's putting on makeup. She's doing up her face. Yeah. And then I think I came back down. We went outside. We had a little meal for everybody. And then I walk back upstairs. I don't see this woman anywhere. Like she's gone. But I'm hearing noises coming from some of the rooms. No. Some room. And they're very loud. And I'm just thinking, okay. No, I guess no judgment. I don't know.
You're not allowed to judge. Yeah.
I can't judge that. And I was just like, okay, that's an experience right there. But actually the people at that particular motel were actually very nice. The people that were working it, that one monologue that he has that he's sitting and it's kind of this like all defeated moment where he's on the phone. Kevin had to shoot a monologue because that's how he wrote it in the script. There's no cutaways for it. And while we're shooting it, there's a tree that's not very far from us. There's all these birds in this tree and these birds, and it's the middle of summer. So these birds are chirping really loud and stuff. So I had to stop filming and then go over there and like clapping really loud. So all these birds would fly away. And I wanted to get it in the shot and I ended up not doing it, but that would have been cool if we had got that. And so I go back to filming Kevin. We're trying to focus. Kevin's, you know, because it's a long monologue. He's tripping over some of his lines. We have to go back, redo it. Yeah. Whatever. So we're shooting this thing. And in the midst of filming it, I'm like right by the camera and I hear like that in the background. And I'm looking back and I'm like, and I see what's going on. And my wife's like, he's trying to help. And I'm like, I know he's trying to help, but he's ruining the movie. And it was one of the other guys and he saw that there was birds and he's trying to like clap for the birds to go away. So I was just like,
I love that.
and I'm just sitting there, just like, it's fine. Like, we're just gonna get through it. We're gonna shoot, and eventually we ended up getting the shot we needed.
Yes, I got to do the action card for the rest of the film.
You're right, but the whole, but that whole experience there was probably like one of the highlights. Just like thinking about making that movie, I was like, that was so much
when
fun.
you get it all wrapped up, do you premiere it in Evansville or do you premiere it in Atlanta, or both?
Oh, I premiered it in Evansville. So we premiered it. Initially I wanted to do a premiere at like Showplace or something. But when the opportunity came up that I was like, oh, well, we could probably premiere it at Victory. I was like, why don't I just do it that way? Because then people would come to see, we could come to see our film and then also see other films at the festival. And it would be nicer to do it that way, so we weren't having to like go to Showplace and spend like, X number of dollars to be like, oh yeah, we want to premiere this movie, and then people being worried like, I don't know if enough people are going to come or whatever. So we ended up going to premiered it at Victory International Film Festival. It was at the WNIN theater that they have there, and that theater doesn't hold very many seats. It looks, when you see pictures of it, you're like, oh, that looks like a really nice little mini version of a theater. Well, we packed the whole thing full, and I had family and friends and people that were in the movie that were going to see the movie. People would have to sit in the aisles just to watch the movie. Fortunately, they had like a screen outside. I stood up the whole time. I was in the aisleway because you're the creator. You're like, I'm a little embarrassed, or nervous. How people are going to react to the movie. But it was a good experience. I mean, we got Audience Choice Award, which is a great award. So it's like everybody sees the movie, they vote on which one they like the most, and everyone seemed to really enjoy the movie when we premiered it there. So it was cool.
Yeah, our friend, Tom and I's friend Paul Bragan was in your film. He had a short little stint where he was at an arcade game. Yeah, he was very pumped when I saw him at the VIP party. He was like, "Did you hear about all the awards I won?" And I said, "Okay, buddy, tell me about it." And then no, I thought that was neat. This is a very, very I'm all in on Pears. That was a great film. Seriously, top to bottom, front to back. Really, really great. I'm proud to say that you're one of us. You're from here, man. So what's in retrospect, what's one of the things you think you would have changed about Pears? Do you think you would have changed anything, or maybe a lesson learned in a feature length?
Oh man,
as
so
your
many.
first feature length film? Like, is there something you learned from that, or that you would have changed?
Yeah, that like when I thought, well, even going into the movie, I knew like this was going to be a learning experience. Like I knew this wasn't going to be perfect. I had a mindset of like, this isn't going to be perfect. This isn't going to be like the greatest movie ever made or anything by that standard. But I was like, I'm going to learn a bunch of stuff making this. Oh man, I think looking back on the movie, I think there's some things that I shot or how I shot certain scenes. I was like, oh, I wish I had done this, or I thought of this when I was shooting it, or made it look like this. And those are like more minute technical things that I looking at the movie, I wish I'd framed certain scenes differently. I had it beholden on me that I would be like, okay, I'm going to shoot everything on a tripod. Like every shot in this movie is on a tripod, where some people would say, that was a good idea. And then there's some that might say maybe that wouldn't have been a good idea. There's some scenes I wish I hadn't shot on a tripod, like especially the beginning of the movie.
Like as opposed to what? Like on a gyro,
like a gimbal
or
handheld?
Yeah.
Well, even just handheld, just to give some kind of movement other than just like, okay, we're looking at this. Now we're looking over here, something tight, like just maybe even following the characters just to give a little bit more of a chaotic
I feel
feel
like your
to it.
Scenes flowed still very well.
Yeah. And I think it looks pretty good. And there's some lighting things I wish I had changed, but there's those little technical things. Then there's like some script things where I wish like, oh, I wish I had started the movie a little bit sooner, or like, I wish that this scene and this scene were combined, or like, I wish I had the forethought to include a scene like this into the script. There's just a lot of those little things, but it's just like every time I see the movie, I just see all these mistakes. But not everybody sees those. So that's just kind of the curse of being the creator, And
you did all the color correcting?
Yeah, I did. So yeah, I did the color correcting or the color grading for the whole film. So we shot it in like a log look, and then we went back and made the colors, and I wanted it to have like a little filmy look to it. So I did add like not a filter, but like a power grade that I bought and then I had tweaked it from scene to scene based off what the color needed to look like, or what the depending on where the scene was at. There were some little flourishes that I had added there too.
What do you do to help like lock into flow state when you have to sit there and just like focus on an edit for on end?
Oh, I mean, I was having this discussion with Charlie earlier because I'm writing another script, and I'm thinking like, what do you got to do? And a lot of it's just like you sit there for 15 minutes, you don't do anything other than just like looking at it, and then eventually you're like, okay, I just got to start one little thing. It's usually that's kind of the thing that'll help you get through anything, is you just need to start, even if it's crap, and you just keep going.
It's
and
like ADHD. I'll do 10 things, and then maybe I'll get locked in those 10 things.
Yeah. And then it's like eventually you get there and you're like, all right, I got something going there. The ball is rolling, and then you get really excited about that one thing and you start writing more and more. And I remember doing that, even writing the script for this. It's just like it was like, oh, this is such a drag to write this. And eventually you go, oh yeah, I can do this. I can,
So that being said though, we talked a little bit about like, wow, it's wild that this is on Amazon Prime. Like, what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts about that, post filming or whatever? And you said, well, it's on to the next thing. And I kind of had assumed that you were working on something, but you just admitted out to the universe just now that you are writing a script.
Yeah.
What do you want to let loose on that? Anything? Or,
what I want to listen. I've told somebody
to talk about.
Oh, I can. So I'm writing another script. It's a kind of a heist, low stakes heist movie type thing, but it's about like 4 friends. And I don't know, like I'm getting into the point now where I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be filmable or not. Like I'm like not filmable in like what I did for Pears, where it's like very low budget and knowing a lot of people and having those connections. Yeah, there'll probably be some more fundraising. There'll be fundraising involved in this one. But it's about 4 friends who have, instead of going out like on friends trips and be like, yeah, we got that trip scheduled. We're going to go to Gatlinburg, or we're going to go to this wherever, and then see the local scenery and maybe go to antique shop and go hiking or something like that. Instead of that, they go on these trips as heist, where they go and steal stuff from like these like roadside attractions and like small town museums.
I like that.
And their whole thought is like, who cares? Like, it's just some, like, I was thinking, I remember like our friends do this. So it's kind of based off my friends in a way. And
maybe don't incriminate anybody here.
Well, they've seen an early draft, so they know I'm writing this. But there was one trip we went to Blue Ridge, Georgia, and in Blue Ridge there's a Bigfoot museum, and at this Bigfoot museum they have a display, Bigfoot's feces. Like there's a display with his feces. Like they're like, yeah, this is Bigfoot's poop. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, how ridiculous would it be if somebody like would steal something, stole it, But that was kind of that's the idea for the next script I'm working on currently.
Are you feeling comedy on this one? I'm feeling comedy.
It'll probably lean comedy, but I'm being a little more trying to be a more PG-13, I guess is the best way of putting it. Because
Gotcha.
I think I may have gone a little too overboard with Pears in some respects, where I'm like, I don't know if I need to drop that many F-bombs or, bad language or whatever,
Yeah, there were a few.
So I'm trying to like write something that's maybe a little like still has fun, but maybe just a little less. It's not trying to go for Tarantino, and I was never intended to do that.
There's something to be said about like I think Disney has this on lock when they make like they make a child's movie, but they find a way to pencil in humor for the adults that they know are unfortunately there watching this film for their children. Yeah, like a subliminal adult joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you
like
think
it flies over their heads?
Yeah. You think you'd be able to tie some stuff in there like that, like subliminal adult humor?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's not going to be. But then again, I don't know. I think the thing that I'm writing now might be more just like a PG-13 comedy in that vein, but like maybe not as Disney. And I wouldn't say it's a family. What I'm working on is not a family movie.
Okay,
if that makes sense. So more.
Yeah, I get you.
But
a little more in between from like the small child.
Like take it down and stop. Like you used a lot of F-bombs in the last one. Like take it down a couple notches. You don't need to go. That's crazy. So
I liked the F-bombs, man, because it just feels real. But I watch a lot of adult style.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't have children, so I don't know what that's like.
So, Ryan, was there like ever a moment on this journey of Pears where you were just like, I don't know if I want to keep filming this. I don't know if I'm going to even get this thing done. Like, I just want to give up on it. Or, like, was there ever a dark moment? And we don't care about that, but like, what pulled you through that moment?
There wasn't like that bad where I was like, I got to stop doing this or we're done or like that's it. But there was a moment where, there was a big hiccup that kind of like put me in a bad funk. And basically what happened was there was a scene where we were shooting this scene out at this park. And the guy that I had that day, which was really great because he was there many days. And it was just somebody I'd met through IFN who I messaged like, hey guys, I'm making a feature film. I need just some help. If anybody wants to help with crew or whatever. And I needed somebody somebody each day to at least help with the sound, just to record sound while we're doing it. Cause I can't just record sound and shoot at the same time or hold a boom up. So I was fortunate to find somebody who was willing to help out that day. And they had helped before, but they hadn't helped with the sound. And so I handed him all the sound equipment. I was like, you know how to use this, right? And he's like, yeah. I've done this before. And I was like, great. So we record a whole scene, record another scene. Then we have to drive to another location and shoot another scene. We get to that next location and I look over what it is recording and it's like just flashing red. And we're using a task cam. And on the task cam, if it's like flashing red, that's just on standby mode. That means it's not actually recording. So I was like, has it been doing that whole time? And he's like, and I could tell like he knew. That's when he knew. He was like, uh-oh, like I screwed up. And it wasn't his fault. It was really my fault because I didn't explain to him. I should have been a little more thorough and been like, and that was another lesson learned. It's just like, if you're going to have somebody else do something, you really have to like show them like, this is how this thing works. So you understand like, okay, I get it. Like, this is what I got to do. And I go back, listen to the audio and we missed all this. Like we had no audio, separate audio for all these scenes. Luckily, we had audio coming from the camera. It's not the best, but we were able to use that just to scratch track here and there. But it was like that moment was just like, oh, it was just such a loss because I just thought I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm going to have to ADR this stuff. All this stuff's going to have to be redone. All these things are going to happen. And it was like really frustrating. And I remember because we were staying in Evansville at my in-laws. And I remember my father-in-law was just like, you're letting that like eat you up. Like you can't you got to just keep moving on and like quit thinking that that's just going to ruin the whole experience. And kind of just cut that to heart. And then the rest of the film, like I just was like, all right, let's just finish the rest of the movie. Like, let's just not worry about this. And so we just ended up getting to the end and finishing the whole film and, turned out the way it did. So it was all good at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Beautiful. It turned out beautifully.
Yeah.
Great.
So it sounds like family was almost your driving force, that kind of like that familial reinforcement where they kind of gave you some words of wisdom and you were just like, yeah, you know what? You're not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how important is that to you to have like a extra people around you? Like I can't think of the word that I'm trying to.
Well, like your wife helps a lot too.
But like a supporting cast. Yeah. Like people around, like a support system. How important is that around you when you're taking on like a large task, like making a feature film? I mean, I think as like a creative person, especially if you're doing like a movie or doing something like you're the artiste or whatever, you know, very like ego driven type thing. I think it's really easy to get lost in that. And it's almost like a curse where you're just like, I'm just so focused on doing this, and then everything else you kind of neglect, unfortunately. And it is nice to have somebody who can kind of pull you back a little bit, and just say, hey, whoa. Like, I know, like, you got to be a little more cautious of how you say things to other people. Be more cautious about how, like, you might be like, I'm mad about how this turned out, and you don't want to blame anybody that doesn't need to be blamed for something, or you need to be a little bit more careful with your words. So I think it's nice to have somebody, especially having my wife there was very helpful.
and even in the cast, like a lot of the cast were people that I had worked with before, and I knew their vibe on set. So it was nice working with people that I already knew, especially Kevin, because Kevin and I we've known each other for a very long time. We've done other movies and stuff together. So it was nice to just have people who kind of just understood you on that level. So you didn't have to do as much. You didn't have to tell them as much stuff to get what you wanted out of it. You were like, okay, we understand. Okay, cool. Yeah. This joke. Yeah. This is how you kind of say it. Oh, okay. Got it. Things like that. So that stuff's also really nice too.
Yeah. Supporting cast is huge, man. Both like when you're creating a film and, outside of the film, having that supporting cast has got to be huge. So, I'm glad you had them to lean on, man. Yeah, and then Tom, do you have any additional questions, man? I think I'm all tapped out.
No, I think this has been a great little insight into Ryan McCurdy here in the film Pears. I mean, it was a great insight, and my first time meeting you, I know we communicated a bit over text, setting it up. You got to meet Brian in person. I watched this thing twice, and I can't wait to show more people that like it. It's super dope, and I'm glad that we were able to get you in even remotely. We might be doing more of these remotes down the road, and last few minutes is really all you. Where can people find you? Where can people find Pears?
Like contacting you, where they can find your content.
You can find me on Instagram. Usually, I'm Man Throw Stick, which is like a production company that I run under. Man Throws Stick, I think is what it's at. And then for Pears, you can find that under Pears Movie. I think it's at Pears Movie on Instagram. You can also find, I also do another podcast thing called Ranked. With, Charlie, who's one of our, who's the editor again, we were talking about earlier. You can find me on Ranked. I'm on the Ranked podcast that's on YouTube. And then the film Pears, you can see that currently on Amazon Prime Video and then soon to be on Tubi. So you can check it out there, and you can rent or own it on Amazon Prime.
Nice, man. Nice. It's been nothing short of a pleasure to talk to you, sir. I think the virtual went okay, but we really got to do a sit down face to face sometime, man. I got to see you again. So we'll have to do one, whether we come to Atlanta or you come to Evansville, but maybe we can lock you in for another interview sometime in the near future, man. So
totally.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Tom, I'm glad you're done twirling your mustache. So thank you for everything you've done to set this up for us today, Tom. And Ryan, I look forward to your many works that we're going to see in the very near future. So, and your time today as well. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys.
This is another thrilling episode of the Day's Grimm, folks. So tell your friends about us. Like, share, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Click the little buttons, do all that. This has been another thrilling episode. My name is Brian Michael Day.
My name is Thomas Grimm.
And this has been Mr. Ryan McCurdy. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.